I went out and I killed people. I did somersaults, told jokes I never heard, played the piano, which I can't play.
Jackie Gleason brought us the most terrible television program of all time in 1961. The worst sections were eliminated by CBS. The raw tapes are now available. As he screams into the camera, he completely messes up his lines and passes out on stage. The rest of the cast had to help him through sequences since he slurred his speech. The Honeymooners didn't stop because the creators were in a creative standstill. This footage finally proves it. Viewing this recording will change your perspective on Ralph Creighton forever. New York City is the site of Jackie Gleason's birth, which took place on February 26, 1916, to Herbert Walton Gleason, Jr. May Maisie Gleason and Herbert Sr. were Irish immigrants who came to the United States to start a new life. His mom was an attendant at a subway change station, while his dad was an insurance auditor. In the working-class district of Bushwick, where they resided in a little house at 364 Chantey Street, every dollar was significant. Tragically, Jackie's life took a turn at the tender age of 9. His father disappeared without a trace on December 15, 1925. He secretly resigned his work and burnt all of the photographs of himself before he left. Simply disappeared without a trace or prior notice. It was the last time Jackie saw him. He confessed that he still occasionally hoped his father would be in the crowd or behind the scenes, even after he became famous. That moment never arrived. Because she was now on her own, his mother had to work extra to make ends meet. As Jackie's time spent on the streets increased, she began to take on additional shifts. In an effort to learn from the local hustlers, he began to miss school and spend his time in pool halls. However, an unforeseen event transpired. Participating in a class play gave him a fresh experience. He reveled in the spotlight. A new path ahead of him became apparent to him for the very first time. Jackie has more than one broken heart. Clement, Jackie's older brother, died of spinal meningitis several years before their father departed, at the tender age of 3. Everything changed when Clement died. He had been weak from birth. His mother's fear of losing another kid caused her to become overprotective. Instead of letting Jackie face the dangers of Brooklyn streets, she kept Jackie indoors. From behind a window, Jackie observed while other children played outdoors. The poor soul term, which he employed for many years in his comedic routines, was allegedly inspired by this isolation, he said afterwards. Tragic events befell Jackie once more at the age of 19. His mom had a terrible condition called a carbuncle on her neck. She begged Jackie to pierce it at home since they couldn't afford to go to the doctor. She passed away not long afterward from a fatal bacterial illness. For the remainder of his life, Jackie held himself responsible. He never really got over the guilt. It was like a wound that never healed. Only 36 pennies were left by his mother when she passed away in 1935. It was Jackie's sole possession. I have no house, no family, and no money. Jackie declined the offer from a friend's family to put him up for adoption. He had no need for charity because he planned to succeed independently. Things got much more difficult during the Great Depression. Jackie worked whatever job he could find because the unemployment rate was over 20%. To put food on the table, he took jobs as a pool hall hustler, a carnival barker, and an MC at little theaters, all for very little money. In the evenings, he would put on amateur comic acts, where he would more frequently than not fall flat. However, he persisted in expanding his knowledge. He learned how to read crowds, which allowed him to convert his hardships into comedic moments. A buddy of his, Sammy Birch, got him a week-long engagement at Reading, Pennsylvania's Tiny's Chateau nightclub, which was his first genuine break. It was a beginning, even though the salary was only $19 for 7 nights. It was a disaster on his first night. The crowd could see he was plagiarizing jokes from other comics. He was often made fun of by truckers and miners. Jackie was determined not to quit. He made a complete and utter turnaround the night after. He began responding to the crowd in real time and abandoned written gags. He poked fun of himself, ridiculed hecklers, and even exploited his weight to his advantage in his performance. "I'm not overweight. I'm simply very noticeable," he laughed. Everyone in the audience thought it was superb. Though Al Long Fifth Avenue was met with mixed reviews upon its Broadway debut, he continued to excel. He continued to play late into the night in venues frequented by influential New Yorkers. Those years molded his comedic style and taught him that working a crowd was more important than natural skill when it came to making it big in the entertainment industry. In 1941, at Club 18, he got his big break. On that particular night, Warner Brothers CEO Jack Warner was among the spectators. The insult comedian Gleason wasted no time getting at him. Instead of taking offense, he said, "Is that your head, sir, or are you diapering a baby?" This left Warner speechless. He extended an enormously generous offer to Gleason, a one-year contract with a weekly salary of $250. The 6 Hollywood features he appeared in as a result of the arrangement were Navy Blues and All Through the Night. While these pictures were not box office smashes, they did build his resume. He learned the ins and outs of Hollywood working with Humphrey Bogart and Betty Grable. He had a hard time standing out, though. The entertainment business wasn't sure how to handle him since he wasn't your typical starring guy. Things weren't going according to plan in Hollywood, but television altered the course of events. His magnetic personality, lightning-fast wit, and boundless energy earned him a spot on Cavalcade of Stars by the early 1950s. The Jackie Gleason Show was an immediate hit upon its September 20, 1952, live debut, and CBS saw his talent and hired him in 1951. Gleason became one of the most famous faces on television as it garnered an incredible 42% rating. He was unique because of his ability to form meaningful relationships with others. His performance was more than that. It was a reflection of who they were. He played Ralph Creighton, a bus driver with lofty ambitions in The Honeymooners, and that was the secret to his success. Even before its October 1955 CBS solo premiere, The Honeymooners had become a beloved series among viewers. The characters had their radio debut in 1951 on Cavalcade of Stars and later featured in skits on The Jackie Gleason Show. However, as the show expanded into a full-fledged series, viewers felt an emotional connection unlike any other. Ralph Creighton was far from an ideal spouse. Despite his impatience and irritability, he was devoted to his closest buddy Ed Norton and madly in love with Alice. Because Gleason desired that the emphasis remain on the marriage, the Creightons chose not to have a family. What really set the program apart was how they kept the plot focused on their connection. As a sitcom, The Honeymooners peaked at number 2 in the United States, only behind I Love Lucy. However, the show's success was short-lived. As a result of NBC's The Perry Como Show providing such strong competition, its ratings began to decline. Its ranking dropped to 19th by September 1956. Gleason shocked everyone by deciding to cancel the series after only 39 episodes. Because he thought they had exhausted all possible new ideas, he was afraid they would produce mediocre episodes. It was costly to keep the program continuing and quite taxing to produce so many episodes in a single season. Gleason just walked away instead of trying to prolong it. The impact of The Honeymooners remained long after the show's cancellation. With just 39 episodes, it quickly rose to the ranks of television's most replayed programs. It has maintained its 8.6 IMDb rating and flawless score on Rotten Tomatoes for decades. Its impact can't be disregarded. Fred Flintstone was influenced by Ralph Creighton. The foundation of shows like Roseanne and All in the Family was its realistic depiction of working-class life. To further commemorate the figure and his creator, an 8-foot bronze sculpture of Creighton was erected outside of Manhattan's Port Authority bus station in 1999. Things weren't always easy behind the scenes, even if the show appeared to be flowing naturally on television. Gleason was an actor with a distinct style. There was no rehearsal for him. Though he acknowledged that spontaneity may be problematic, he felt it added authenticity to performances. On occasion, he would freeze up during his lines, necessitating assistance from Audrey Meadows, Alice, and Art Carney, Ed. Meadows mastered the art of directing him back on course with nuanced looks and movements. Gleason maintained his distance from his co-stars, even if they had chemistry on film. At one point, Art Carney came clean about the fact that their relationship was all business. Even Audrey Meadows had an uphill battle. Gleason first passed on her for the Alice part because he thought she was too young. Sending in images of herself appearing even more exhausted, she was adamant about proving him incorrect. That was successful. She landed the role and went on to become a fan favorite among TV spouses. In addition to being the show's headliner, Gleason oversaw practically every facet of production. He caused friction with the authors and crew by interfering with their work on the scripts, staging, and production. On top of everything else, his perfectionist standards added stress to an already hectic filming schedule. There were no takes because the event was recorded live at New York's Adelphi Theater. They had to find ways to compensate if something went wrong. Gleason used Ralph's habits, like stroking his stomach, to buy himself time when he fumbled lines. Despite the fact that The Honeymooners only lasted for one season, Gleason continued to portray the role. The Jackie Gleason Show featured Ralph Cradon and his universe in skits from 1966 to 1970. Afterwards, they made cameo appearances in musical specials called The Color Honeymooners. While these revivals failed to replicate the original show's enchantment, they did manage to bring the characters back for an additional period. Comedian and actor Jackie Gleason shocked everyone in 1952 with an unexpected move. Music for Lovers Only, his debut album, revolutionized the music business. The record wasn't meant to be dramatic or loud. Rather, it was meant to be sweet and gentle. It was personal rather than intrusive, with a fusion of jazz and sumptuous orchestration. It was well received. The album set a record that is currently standing at 153 weeks on the Billboard Top 10. To call Gleason a musician would be an understatement. He was blind to music theory and composition, but he could hear quality when he heard it. The way cinematic score intensified emotional moments captivated him. Similar music, meant to be played subtly in the background as one enjoyed a meal, a drink, or a peaceful evening, was something he aspired to compose. He assembled renowned musicians and arrangers to give life to his concept, which he dubbed musical wallpaper. He didn't write the song himself, but he did provide explicit instructions. His team took his oral descriptions, which included humming melodies, and transformed them into whole compositions. My Funny Valentine and I'm in the Mood for Love, two of the album's great tracks, are now commonly associated with romantic jazz. Music for Lovers Only's popularity was only the start. Music, Martinis and Memories, and Lonesome Echo were some of Gleason's subsequent releases. Nobody could equal the success of his first 10 albums, which all sold over 1 million copies. Interestingly, not a single track from any of these albums did well when released independently. The album's ability to evoke a certain feeling from beginning to end was more magical than any individual song on them. Bebop jazz was king and rock and roll was only starting to gain traction in the music industry when this happened. Despite initial doubts, Gleason sensed potential in romantic instrumentals. Music that evokes feelings rather than commands attention has an audience, he recognized. That is precisely what he provided them. His record's widespread adoption demonstrated his talent for tapping into listeners' desires. The caliber of the musicians he collaborated with was a major factor in the success of his music. Bobby Hackett, a jazz trumpeter, was his most significant partner. The smooth and warm trumpet playing of Hackett established a trademark sound on Gleason's albums from 1953 until 1960. Because he was allowed to improvise, the arrangements became even more vibrant. Producer Gleason also had help from other artists, such as saxophonist Charlie Ventura and trumpeter Pee Wee Irwin. It was well known that Gleason took good care of his musicians. As the popularity of big band jazz declined in the 1950s, many session musicians found it difficult to secure jobs. They were given opportunities by Gleason. To get the luxuriant sound he desired, he would engage huge orchestras, which may include up to 27 violinists. He departed from conventional jazz in his approach. By combining classical and easy listening styles, he created something fresh. Pete King, Gleason's arranger, was also an important cog in the wheel. In developing Gleason's ideas into fully realized works, King was instrumental. Their combined efforts gave each record a polished, uniform sound. It was hard to turn a blind eye to Jackie Gleason. He had the ability to elicit laughter with a single glance and captivate an audience with his subtle passion. A billiard hall icon who hardly needed words to illustrate his talent, Minnesota Fats was introduced to viewers in 1961 by The Hustler. Fast Eddie Felson, played by Paul Newman, was a young con artist on the rise. However, Eddie soon discovered he was completely out of his depth when he faced Fats in a game. Gleason gave a natural and flawless performance. He was quite silent, but his every gesture conveyed something. It was as if he had been playing for years, what with the way he strangled his cue and lined up his shots. He was being serious. For the sake of authenticity, Gleason honed his billiard skills for hours. He walked precisely around the table despite his big stature. Because of how convincing he was, many thought he had always played pool. He was quite effective with the little screen time he had. Skeptics took note. He received Best Supporting Actor honors from the National Board of Review in addition to an Oscar nomination for his performance. An actual pool hustler by the name of Rudolph Wanderin claimed to have been inspired by the role once it became famous. Even though writer Walter Tease disputed it, the moniker had already been synonymous with the picture. Smokey and the Bandit, 1977, was Gleason's first film role in almost 15 years. In this role, he portrayed Sheriff Buford T. Justice, an ostentatious and self-assured lawman bent on apprehending the robber portrayed by Burt Reynolds. Gleason got his inspiration from a real-life Florida highway patrol trooper who was known to Reynolds' father. His improvisational skills, nevertheless, were the showstoppers in the part. He took full use of the opportunity to write his own lines. What we're dealing with here is a complete lack of respect for the law. I'm going to barbecue your ass in molasses. Buford came up with the idea for one of the funniest scenes in the movie, where he sits down at a diner and unknowingly talks about Bandit, while Bandit is sitting right next to him. His lines instantly became classics. Buford was the ideal comic villain because to his combination of hubris and ineptitude. It was a huge hit with audiences. With a budget of under $4.3 million, it became the second highest grossing picture of the year, behind only Star Wars, with $127 million. That achievement was greatly contributed to by Gleason's performance. Thanks to the film's success, there were 2 more installments, and Buford was a constant favorite with audiences. His incessant scolding of his naive son Junior was hilarious in and of itself. As one of the all-time greats in the comedy picture industry, Gleason was solidified in his position with the Smokey and the Bandit trilogy. To be clear, he wasn't only seeking amusement. Gigo, a deeply personal endeavor of his, was undertaken in 1962. For years, he had fantasized of making this film. He was instrumental in developing the plot, penning the screenplay, and creating the score for the picture. His silent janitor from 1920s Paris was a departure from his often noisy portrayals. Gleason could only convey himself through body language and facial movements as he was mute. He aspired to make an emotionally impactful picture after seeing Charlie Chaplin's The Kid. In keeping with his persona, Gigo met Nicole, a girl whose mother was a prostitute. Even though the locals teased him, he was actually rather nice to them. The sequence where he tries to convey Christianity to Nicole using just gestures is one of the most dramatic in the film. His profound empathy and his anguish at his speechlessness were on full display in that one instant. The movie's box office take was low. It was criticized by some for being too romantic and by others for being a vanity effort. It revealed a new side of Gleason, yet it bombed at the box office. He was an adventurous artist, not only a comic. Although Jackie Gleason was a household name, she, like many celebrities, made errors. His game show, You're in the Picture, premiered in 1961. The inauguration of John F. Kennedy took place on the same night that it broadcast, January 20th. Though peculiar, the idea was straightforward. The four famous panelists poked their heads out of the giant images. Famous moments or song lyrics were shown in these photographs. The panelists were asked yes-no questions by Jackie Gleason to help them estimate their location. Assuming they were correct, 100 care packages were given in their honor. Donation was made under Gleason's name in case of an error. As an idea, it may have been entertaining. Worst-case scenario, it bombed. The stakes were low in this game. Those were boring questions. It was pointless for them to pay attention. Everyone on the panel appeared bewildered. I felt self-conscious and like it had no purpose whatsoever. The reviewers were really harsh. Time magazine ranked it as the worst program in American network television's 13-year history. It was terrible, even to Gleason. He sought the opinion of a stagehand after the performance had concluded. After some hesitation, the man finally told Gleason, "The commercials were great." Pocahontas rescued John Smith in the pilot episode, and males gawked at a bikini-clad lady. These instances, however, failed to elicit any amusement. There was little doubt that You're in the Picture would be short-lived as the game got monotonous and the program concluded. Gleason shocked everyone a week later on January 27th. He didn't bother to try to improve the show. Instead, he canceled it and used the following edition as a live apology. Stepping onto an empty stage, he was accompanied with a chair, a little table, an ashtray, and a cup of coffee. Gleason just addressed the crowd. There was no game, no panelists, and no tricks. He began by being quite forthright. "Last week we did a show that laid, without a doubt, the biggest bomb in history." He went on to make a joke about how 300 years of entertainment expertise had gone into creating what he deemed a disaster, and he compared it to an H-bomb. He charmed his way through the reasons the play bombed. He playfully transferred blame to everyone else, even the stagehands who had assured him the concert was fine, before blaming the unpredictable nature of show business. This time, the response was totally different. The audience adored it. Even critics who had previously panned You're in the Picture were quick to commend Gleason on his forthrightness. Compared to the show, the apology was much funnier. His refusal to offer explanations was well received. Taking full responsibility of his setback, he managed to make it humorous. This was a welcome change in a field where blunders were frequently covered up. Although Gleason's sponsors were not pleased with his reaction, the crowd was. Particularly problematic was one joke. During his stand-up, he once raised his coffee cup and mockingly stated, "Chock full O's." While the crowd found this amusing, Kellogg's took offense. The event was co-sponsored by Kellogg's, Leggett, and Myers, the makers of L&M cigarettes, and others. In contrast to the cigarette brand, Kellogg's was seen as being suitable for families. Even in jest, they didn't want their family name linked to booze. In an official statement, Kellogg's stated that they had withdrawn their sponsorship due to the fact that You're in the Picture had evolved into something quite different from its original intent. The true reason Leggett and Myers weren't as furious, though, was Gleason's casual comment. They enjoyed it when Gleason smoked on TV since it was free advertising for their business. However, CBS was forced to reevaluate the entire show due to Kellogg's lack of support. The Jackie Gleason show was an attempt to adapt You're in the Picture for a chat show format. The show, which included interviews with famous people and comedic elements, was short-lived. The show was canceled on March 24, 1961, after only 7 more weeks. Although Jackie Gleason possessed an incredible amount of skill, his private life was a chaotic mess. He lived his life with alcohol. It was more than a vice. On set, he would drink excessively, often showing up completely tipsy. He continued working while sipping whiskey-infused coffee when filming was not in progress. Because of this, he may modify things on a dime or forget his lines, requiring the actors to improvise. His intoxication threw whole productions of The Honeymooners into disarray. He was the showstopper, and nobody could take that away from him. Even when I wasn't on the clock, things were crazy. He frequented the Manhattan watering hole Toots Shor's bar, where intoxication was not only tolerated, but actively promoted. After a losing wager on a bottle of scotch, He blacked out at the bar one night. The personnel did not bother to wake him up and instead left him lying on the floor. As if it were any other night, other customers trod all over him. In that way, Gleason spent his life. Even after being diagnosed with diabetes, doctors urged him to quit, but he disregarded their warnings. 6 double scotches, devoid of water, made up his typical meal. He continued as before, despite the toll it had on his health. Equally excessive were his spending habits. He was a free spirit who lived lavishly. Hotels were forced to soundproof his apartment due to the volume of his gatherings. He shelled out $30 grand on a Rolls-Royce adorned with burgundy and opalescent paint. His round residence, Round Rock, cost $650,000 and included circulating pianos and Italian marble fireplaces. An air of superiority permeated all of his possessions. Another luxury was food. Even ordering multiple pizzas was too much for him. Because he purchased so many tailored suits, some of which cost thousands of dollars, his tailor referred to him as the best-dressed, stocky guy. His hobbies also cost a big penny. He used to wager $100 every hole when he played golf. His wager that Grace Kelly would wed Prince Rainier III of Monaco was a bust, costing him $3,000. At its height, his net worth was $85 million. Even though he donated to several causes, he kept mum about it. His romantic life was equally disordered. He tied the knot 3 times, but each union was fraught with difficulty. He wed Genevieve Halford in 1936, but his adultery and relentless partying made life difficult for her. On several occasions, they drifted apart. She went to see him in the hospital in 1954 after he hurt his leg on set, but Marilyn Taylor was already there. She sought a formal separation but would not grant him a divorce due to her strong Catholic faith. She didn't give her approval until 1970. His marriage to Beverly McKittrick, which he entered into just 10 days following his divorce, was short-lived, lasting only 5 years. Following that, he got back in touch with Marilyn Taylor, the lady Halford had wooed many years before. They tied the knot in 1975, and she remained by his side till he passed away in 1987. Outside of marriage, he was just as careless in his relationships. While he was still married to Halford officially, his secretary Honey Merrill began an affair with him. Eventually, she departed. The wait for him to decide was becoming too much for her. His inability to commit stemmed from his tendency to live in the now. In 1954, he was hospitalized with a fractured leg, which became one of the most scandalous events of his life. Genevieve Halford, his wife, came to see him when he was in the hospital after suffering an injury on his TV program. They tied the knot in 1936 but had a rocky marriage that included many separations. Even so, Genevieve was completely unprepared for what she encountered that day. Marilyn Taylor, a dancer from Jackie's show, was already in the room with him when she arrived at the hospital, so he wasn't alone. Nobody could remain silent about what transpired next. Everyone in the hospital could hear Genevieve and Marilyn squabble. Other patients and staff members were also aware of what was going on. Genevieve felt compelled to act at that very moment. She sought legal separation shortly after the altercation, but they didn't finalize their divorce until 1970. That meant their legal ties would last for another 16 years. The affair revealed more than just Jackie's adultery. It also demonstrated the fractured nature of their relationship. Conversely, Marilyn would grow in significance in Jackie's life. Marilyn was his second wife. He wed her after divorcing Beverly McKittrick, and they remained married until his death in 1987. Genevieve and Jackie's marriage had been troubled from the start. Their relationship was characterized by manipulation from the beginning, which they encountered while performing in vaudeville. Genevieve publicly dated other men in an effort to pressure Jackie into proposing. On September 20th, 1936, her strategy paid off and they were married. The joy, however, was fleeting. Jackie and her husband had a rocky marriage due to his inability to settle down and his penchant for wild parties. Genevieve still wouldn't give him a divorce, even though their marriage was clearly failing. She held the firm belief that marriage was eternal as a practicing Catholic. Not content to let Jackie go, she also sought to maintain control of their relationship. Genevieve fought Jackie's attempts to leave for good on multiple occasions beginning in 1941. In 1954, after the hospital scandal, she filed for a dissolution of her marriage, but she still wouldn't let go. It took 34 years after their marriage ended for their divorce to be officially finalized in 1970. For decades, their relationship was fraught with conflict. Using jealousy as a motivator, Genevieve got Jackie to pop the question right away. Subsequently, she maintained her power by refusing to divorce him. Despite his achievements, Jackie was unable to steer clear of the mayhem in his private life. The problems from his first marriage entangled all of his subsequent relationships with women.